One. Yeah, we're live. Guys, I'm really excited to be joined by not only Venu, but special guests in Ross and Jack from the Cricket Pod. How are you guys doing?
Yeah, good. Thanks, mate. Thanks for having us on the show.
No problem at all. Guys, if you haven't already, please check out their podcast, the Cricket Podcast. Really, really good content. And yeah, they've doing a few now YouTube collaborations as well. So I'm sure you'll be delving into that soon enough. So it'd be nice to see you guys on here as well. Okay, let's go straight into it because we want to discuss the England-India tour coming up, which is a really exciting series. And as Venu and yourself, Ross, said, it's on Channel 4. So I can't wait to hear Simon Hughes doing analysis on the cricket. No, I can't wait. I'm hoping it's not him. I'm hoping it's not him. I have to be honest. I'm hoping it's not him. So, sorry, Simon Hughes, if you're watching, which I'm sure you're not, so it probably doesn't matter.
I'm looking forward to the Mambo number 5 intro music. That's what I'm looking forward to.
Oh, yeah. That's my childhood there.
Mark Nicholas is okay. I don't mind him, so that should be good. I'm looking forward to him at least. But yeah, before we touch upon that though, I wanted to touch upon the England versus Sri Lanka series because, of course, I predicted I think it was Sri Lanka, which was completely wrong. Have a slight advantage given they're at home, and I thought, they've had a bit of Test cricket, and England might be a bit rusty, and I was like, you know what? I was kind of thinking Mbodinya would get wickets, but not just him. But clearly, Sri Lanka's bowlers didn't get the memo, and it was just Mbodinya who picked up wickets. And England just played really well. So you guys both predicted 2-0, I remember. So you guys can be smug and tell me how wrong I was about it.
I think 2-0 was obviously what everyone would choose. You just tried to be a bit with the in crowd. You tried to be a bit hip with it, and it backfired. That's fine.
Yeah, I tried to go left field. I've been going very left field with my predictions. I think I've been more going with the more exciting, as you said, kind of flair decisions. So I went with, for example, Pakistan, New Zealand 2-0, and that backfired spectacularly. But I have gone Pakistan, South Africa 2-0. So I'm halfway there. So I might be able to catch up. So we'll see.
Stop the rot.
Yeah. So, part of the, I guess, the reason why England won that series 2-0 is, of course, the spinners, right? So let's touch upon that. Jack Leach and Dom Bess. So I'll go to you, Ross, first.
Mm-hmm.
Did they impress you? Because I remember before we were talking about them a lot. Did they impress you in Sri Lanka or not?
So I'm not sure England spinners won us the series 2-0, if I'm perfectly honest. They kind of my view is that Sri Lanka's batsmen kind of won it for us. If you look at Don Bess's fifer in the first test and look at how they batted in the last innings of the second test, it was like they'd not played Test cricket before, or even cricket in some aspects. I mean, did you see the reverse sweeps in the first innings? They were unbelievably bad. What is encouraging, though, is that they've got some overs underneath their belts. I think it was important for Jack Leach. He was obviously out of cricket for a year, nearly died when he had sepsis in New Zealand. So it's a pretty great story that he came back and actually got some wickets. What is worrying for England, though, is that the standard of those two probably isn't as high as the standard of some of just the regular Indian spinners you see in the IPL. So it's a little bit worrying on that front. However, they do bowl together, or they have bowled together at Somerset on turning pitches. So there might well be a bit of a rekindle of the partnership, and we might see a bit of surprise. Jack, would you agree with that, or?
Well, on the Sri Lanka point, I think the reason we predicted, or certainly the reason I predicted that England would win 2-0, wasn't because I thought England were amazing. It was basically because Sri Lanka are going through a rebuild. If we want to put it politely, Sri Lanka kind of compounded the problems they already had by only picking one bowler who was anywhere sort of like the quality that you need it at international level. I think on balance, England spinners probably bowled averagely in Sri Lanka. I don't think they were as humiliatingly bad as some people suggest. I think the pair of them are kind of all right bowlers. Leach is probably a little bit better, but I think in terms of spinners in world cricket at the moment, they're not the worst, they're not the best. And that's kind of what we got in Sri Lanka, wasn't it?
Yeah, it's pretty slim pickings, I think, for spinners, really, in the Test circuit at the moment anyway, in terms of really top spinners. But yeah, my spinner comment was a bit more tongue-in-cheek, but I wanted to see how you guys reacted, whether you're kind of high on the spinners or not. Yeah, I agree with you. I mean, Dom Bess's fifer in that first innings, his expected wickets was like 0.8 or something. I think Crick visited a stat, and I think that kind of shows, maybe not how poorly he bowled, but maybe the standard of the batting in that innings. He kind of was a bit lucky to get some of the wickets he did get. I think one of them was like it was a short pitch long hop that someone just smashed straight to point. I think it was Dickweller, and I was like, "What is going on?"
That's a wicket taking delivery. They all count. And if you play cricket on the weekend, how many times do they say shit balls get wickets? And it's true. It's true.
They do, but I just didn't think I wasn't expecting someone to say it on an international ground. That's what I heard people saying to Dom Bess.
Dom Bess actually got a little bit stressed out by that. He because people kept saying to him, "Oh, like, do you remember like how bad was that ball that took that wicket?" And he actually turned around at one point and was like, "Well, when a seamer takes a wicket with a half volley, nobody has a go at them for 2 weeks afterwards." But it did look odd. It did look odd. I mean, that's the reality of it. It was one of the worst wicket taking balls you'll ever see.
Yeah. Venu, let's touch upon from a Sri Lankan aspect. Looking at it from your point of view, the spinners, because I want to talk about whether you think they did a particularly good job, or whether, as these guys are saying, which I kind of agree with a little bit, it was a bit of poor application from the batsman. But surely there was a little bit of, I think, in spurts, I saw some decent bowling between Bess and Leach at times. Wouldn't say it set the world alight, but considering they both were the top wicket takers, I think, apart from obviously Mbuldinia, was it just more a case of maybe, as Jack alluded to, that Sri Lanka in a bit of a transitional phase, let's say?
Yeah, they're in a bit of a transitional phase, Sri Lanka. But I don't know how long for. It seems like they've been in transition for the last 3-4 years since Sangakkara, the great Sangakkara's left. But I think Ross was right. I think they should kind of let the team down. Like the first test, all out for 135 in the first innings. They're always in the back foot. The second test, they were in a. Let's be a bit. Let's give Sri Lanka some credit. They were in the match for probably three days for the second test match, and then they were in it. And then the second innings, I have no idea what happened there. Let's not talk about it because I just don't know. Like, was it great? Was it great English bowling? No, not really. It was just poor batting from Sri Lanka, making Bess and Leach look a lot better than they were. And I'll be interested to see how the India tour goes in that regards. But yeah, I think it's the Sri Lanka batting definitely let them down. And yeah, there's something they need to work out. It's a mentality thing, that's for sure. Like Tiramani, how to bat, got a really good 100, and also Angela Matthews got a good 100 as well. But they just couldn't put that. It's a consistent performance. That's the key word across the 5 days, which Sri Lanka were lacking.
Yeah. Okay. Let's touch upon then Joe Root, because I think that was probably one of the biggest factors, the actual biggest factor as to why England won that series. I thought he was really impressive anyway. I actually saw a stat. I don't know if you guys have seen it. He swept over 300 deliveries, I think it was, during those 2 test matches. So a masterclass in how to sweep, let's be honest. And I said on my reviews that I just thought that 200, considering he hadn't scored a test 100 for the whole of 2020, to come in and score that big double 100. I haven't seen one that flawless in a very long time, in the sense that I don't think he gave a single chance away. I don't remember a single drop. And he swept so well. It wasn't just the ordinary conventional sweep. It was a paddle sweep. Occasionally it was a reverse sweep as well. And he just, to me, it was like a masterclass on how to play spin in turning conditions. Yes, the bowlers weren't the highest standard, but I kind of think if we take some of that form into the India tour, England are going to have a chance. What do you think, Jack?
So there's an interesting thing we talked about on our show a couple of weeks ago when we were wrapping up this series, and we basically went through the Crickviz false shot percentages for Joe Root in this series. And I think he was playing a false shot to something like 7% of the deliveries he faced. It was only 45 across the 4 innings he batted. If you're not familiar with false shot percentages or false shot as a metric, basically in international cricket, in Test cricket, there's a wicket about every 14 false shots. So it kind of gives you an indication of whether somebody's been lucky or not been lucky. For people who are quick at maths, who are good at maths, 45, the number of false shots that Root played, isn't even sort of equivalent to being out 4 times. So you could probably make the argument based on how flawless he played, and that's the word really, how flawless he was over the innings he batted in, that Joe Root might actually have been a little bit unlucky not to score some more runs against Sri Lanka. It was a phenomenal performance. I think as dominant you'll see or as dominant as I've seen by an English batsman away from home, going back to Alistair Cook and those series against Australia and India when people just basically couldn't figure out how to get him out. It was unbelievable. And I think this might be something worth watching over the next 12 months. Joe Root, with the runs he's scored already this calendar year, probably has a shot at breaking the record for most Test runs scored in a calendar year. So I think at the moment Mohammed Yusuf has the record with about 1,700 runs. Root's obviously on 400 and something already, so needs to average about 50 probably. He might not. There's some maths you can go into that if you want to, but I think if he can sustain even reasonable form over the next 11 months, we could have a year for the record books.
And there's a lot of England as well this year, like 15 tests. Am I right?
17, I think, isn't it?
Yeah,
including the Sri Lanka series.
Yeah, including the Sri Lanka series. So 15 more.
Do you guys? I think Fizan's probably going to talk about this later, but do you think Root's on course to beat Cook's record? Is that something that you've? Do you think that Sri Lanka series will kind of think actually he could do this?
I think Joe Root's probably got, and I hate to agree with Jeffrey Boycott because he said it yesterday or today, but he's probably got another 100 tests in him. He's still relatively young in cricketing terms. He's a guy who he's getting better as well, which is a good thing. I think he did reasonably well when he was younger coming up. I think taking on the captaincy burden was a little bit difficult, and England went through a transitional phase, and we're probably still in that transitional phase as we're not that good. But Joe Root has proved, after not having as much cricket, he didn't play since 6 months out or whatever it was, to come back and look that good. There's a serious level of talent there.
But I think he'll do it. I think, to answer your question, I think unless he gets a severe injury, I think he'll do it. I think he'll retreat from the white ball game over the next World Cup cycle. He might play one more World Cup, I think, but even that's probably up for debate if we're honest. And I think he'll be the full-time Test captain for probably another 4 years or something. He will play, like Ross says, maybe another 100 tests.
Yeah, I agree with you actually in terms of the 100 tests is interesting because I guess the only thing in the way of that is probably his back, isn't it? Because he's always had that back. Those back issues, the lower back issues, but he seems to have got over them a little bit. Well,
that's just carrying the weight of the England top order.
Yeah, exactly. But he's a phenomenal player. But I think, I heard someone say, we've had a year, for example, where Williamson's been so dominant and Kohli's been so dominant and Steve Smith has been so dominant. We haven't had a single year from Root where he's just been phenomenal. And I feel like this could potentially be that year. And from what you guys are alluding to, considering how many tests they're going to play, it could potentially be that. And you're talking about stats, Venu, as well. I think so. It's going to be his 100th test, isn't it? On that first test in Chennai against India. And he actually has the highest average and most runs of any other batsman to have reached the 100 test match mark before even playing it. So I think that's really impressive and something to, I guess, look at because I don't know if he's underrated, but I think outside of England, there is a slight, let's say, feeling that he maybe shouldn't be in a Fab Four, maybe considering his form last year. But he still averaged, I think it was 48, even though he didn't score a single 100. And then after these first 2 tests, he's been phenomenal. So I think he's difficult to say.
He's better than Babar Azam, isn't he? So.
I think, you know what? I'm going to be honest with you. he is in the sense that, look, I mean, these guys are 5 years ahead of Babar Azam. Like he's 26, right? So he's young. He's my age. So that's so young. He's got like 50 years left. So no, but as in, on a serious note, he's behind them. He's a different generation, really, in terms of those guys all in their 30s now, and he's 26. But he's still got a long way to go to prove himself. He had a very good year last year, but this year he needs to continue to be consistent. And he didn't quite do it in the first test of South Africa, so I think he can't be talked about in that bracket yet, but hopefully he'll get there. But yeah, Joe Root, though, against the spinners, I think that's going to be really the biggest, I think, battle of the series. I think him and maybe Ben Stokes as well. Him and Ben Stokes, I think England are going to be looking upon. What do you think about Root against the spinners? Because he is a good player of spin. I think he averages over 50 against India anyway. But with Ashwin, who they're going to have Axel Patel, I think, because Jadeja's injured, and potentially Washington Sundar, and considering Chennai is such a spinning track, what do you guys think about his chances there?
Well, I think the big thing for me is that he's coming up against Ashwin, and Ashwin is the best spin bowler in the world as far as I'm concerned. And probably the stats probably back that up. I'm not a master stat man. But Joe Root's average against Ashwin is over 80, and his balls per dismissal is 141. So Root is pretty good, but Ashwin is not the same Ashwin who Root has faced before. Ashwin is one of those people who evolves. He's a thinker of the game. We talked about him on our podcast this week around. He's sat in the hotel during the bio bubble between the Australia test, watching 8 hours of footage of bowlers and batsmen to try to figure out how they get them out. You don't put that much effort in and then not and stay the same. The guy has mutated like a virus, and he's taking on a different kettle of fish when it comes to Joe Root and Ashwin.
That's definitely a hiccup on your part, saying I'm mutating a virus, considering the current climate. So I'm gonna let it go. That was a poor choice of words, I think. I was like, that's quite a good one. I was like, no, it's not. I don't think it is. But no, I agree with you. Ashwin is quality. He really is. He's he's evolved, as you said, I think, over the past few years. And there were question marks around how good he'd be in Australia because he doesn't necessarily get that big overspin like someone like Nathan Lyon did, but he adapted and bowled obviously very well in the end. What do you think then about Ben Stokes and Archer, Jack? What do you think about them coming back in? Do you think they'll do a good job on these tracks?
Well, I mean, I think really obviously and really uncontroversially, it's good for England that Ben Stokes and Jofra Archer are back. They're probably in England's best 4 players, certainly in the best 5. I think it'll be interesting in terms. I think how effective they are will be dictated by how English, if you like, in quotes, the wickets end up being in India. Ross and I in our cricket podcast WhatsApp were throwing around some Ben Stokes stats v spin. I am still, if Ben Stokes has a weakness, it is to right arm off-spin bowlers. Ashwin's the bowler who's dismissed in most of any bowler in world cricket. I don't think in Indian conditions Ben Stokes is necessarily a banker to make loads of runs unless you get some kind of friendly wickets. And similarly for Jofra Archer as well. It's if the wickets are a little bit slow, if they're a little bit flat, there's an element. I mean, there's a way. It's hard to see how you'll just be able to run teams over, particularly India at home. And we went through the differentials in terms of away and home batting stats on our podcast as well. And it's like Rohit Sharma averages 88 at home. Kohli averages 68. Pujara averages 60. I think it's great that they're back, but we have to factor. We have to remember that these are probably not great conditions or a great opposition for them to come back against.
Yeah, I mean, Ravi Ashwin, I guess the reason why Ben Stokes has been, as Ross, you said, he is probably the best spinner out there. And considering he's bowling off spin to a left-hander, the spin away from the bat is going to be the most dangerous for him anyway. So I think that's going to be a really interesting battle to see whether Ben Stokes can get over that. I think that'll be it'll be another big test for him. And I think he's proven how he's clearly a very good operator in most conditions. So I think this is going to be a new challenge for him. to see how good he's going to be.
The thing with Stokes is that he, similar to Ashwin, but I think he does it in a kind of different way. I think Ashwin thinks about how he can improve his game, whereas I think Stokes does it by sort of brutal repetition. I mean, there are stories about him being in the nets with the dog wanger and people hitting him with ball after ball after ball in the Ashes in 2019, so he could get used to the possibility that Cummins might hit him. So like that's not really Ashwin's way of doing it, but that's a sort of Stokes hard work. That's a Stokes' style when it comes to hard work, and I think what that means is that as Stokes goes around the circuit again, he'll have been to India once, maybe twice now. I think he'll come back a better player. So yes, Ashwin, I expect to probably get him a few times. I do think that over 8 innings, Stokes will do something. I think 2016 Stokes or was it 2016 or 2017 last time England were in India? I think it was 2017.
Yes.
Either way, I think that version of Stokes was like Stokes 1.1. Now we went through Stokes 1.2, and now I think we're at Stokes 1.3, who's kind of perfected his role with bat and ball. Still be a challenge though.
Yeah, I agree. What do you think, Venu?
I'd add to what Jack said about Stokes. Like in that series, he hit 345 runs and only hit 100 and 150, and his average was 38.33. And Virat Kohli, on the other hand, guess what his average was, Jack?
Was it 109?
109, 200s, 250s.
Yeah.
Highest score 255.
I think that's the difference as well. Basically, in India, is that as we're talking about who might perform from an England perspective, but the reality is probably going to be that Sharma, Gill, Kohli, Pujara, Pant, and Rahane rack up loads and loads of runs. I mean, I actually think England might not take 20 wickets in one of the 4 Test matches, and that's not really an indictment of England's bowlers. That's because they play in England most of the time, and spin isn't a massive factor. And you're playing against one of the all-time, I think probably all-time great home batting Test lineups.
Yeah, 100%. And actually, talking about English wickets, let's touch upon Broad and Anderson, because I think the one Test piece they played, they showed that they still have a bit to give. I think at least a bit to give. I think in these types of conditions, especially with the new ball. They were effective, weren't they? I mean, they picked up wickets, and that's what you could really ask, considering in these conditions, normally, the seamers are in there to contain, and you have the spinners coming on as the attacking options, really, unless it's kind of first, second session of day one. Do you think we're going to see Anderson and Broad playing together in a Test match anytime this series?
I think I'd be surprised if they played together, if I'm perfectly honest. I just don't think they go in with that lineup. I think when it comes to playing in India, England can't go and pick Chris Wokes, Stuart Broad, Anderson and Archer and Stokes in that lineup. There's not the room, and there's not the conditions to do it. I also think England's batting is not strong enough to be able to accommodate that. So they need to have that kind of balance in that side. What I do like about Broad and Anderson kind of going interchangeably throughout the series we saw in Sri Lanka, I think it again comes down to that mental side of things. They're obviously incredible at their craft. Like Jimmy Anderson could bowl all day on the same spot. Stuart Broad could probably do the same thing. They're adding a bit of variation to their game, which is great. But what is a huge factor is their reputation. Shane Warne used to say that sometimes he'd walk out onto the pitch and already know he's got 3 wickets. And Broad and Anderson go out there now with batsmen who are going to be scared to face them. I mean, just look at what happened to David Warner in the Ashes last year or the year before.
Yeah, 100%. And also, I think Kohli, historically, but it was in England, I think it was about 3 or 4 years ago, I think it is now, to be fair, had a lot of problems against Anderson, but these conditions are different. I think when he came back to England the second time, he kind of sold it a little bit. But I'm sure Anderson will be thinking, you know what, if I can get a little bit with a new ball, then he can do something with it. What do you guys think? How effective will they be then, Jack, do you think, though, in these conditions?
Pretty ineffective. I think we just sort of went through the stats of the India top 6. Yeah, look, Anderson and Broad will go down as probably England's 2 best ever bowlers. through, and you'll be able to look at different metrics and measure that. But I think they'll be up there anyway, won't they? You might be able to make arguments with some other people, but they'll be in the picture. But I don't think they will go down as England's best ever bowlers because they went to Chennai, or because they're able to go to Chennai and take 20 wickets. And you can't really judge them for it as well. It's not what they've made their careers on. It's a bit of a hiding to nothing. The only hope I think they might have, or the one time, and I think you might see them play together, is if England decide to go for broke in the day-nighter. So the third test is a day-nighter. It'll be with a pink ball. You might get the famous Jew factor coming into play. And I think if England are 2-0 down at that point, they just go, let's play our best team and hope that the conditions are kind of English, because we can give India a game in England. And if that happens, if that gamble pays off, I think that might actually be England's most realistic route to a test win. And what I will say for Broad and Anderson, though, is that whilst I don't expect them to be super effective in terms of taking wickets, I do think that they will be able to control the run rate. And I think that will be important if England are going to hang in games. You can't let Sharma score a century without a strike rate of 80. And he's well capable of doing that. That's what he'll want to do. That's what Gill will want to do. And Kohli coming in at 4 will be thinking exactly the same thing. Let's score the runs really quickly so that we can get to 600 in 2 days maximum. And then you have effectively won the game if you're India and you do that. If England can really slow that down and make the run rate 200, if they stop India scoring more than, say, 250 in a day, that gives them the chance of taking matches to the 5th day, gives them the chance of holding out for a draw, and it might mean that they get the opportunity to bowl at India on the 5th day. It might make for some pretty attritional cricket from the spectators' point of view, but I don't see how England can win otherwise.
Yeah, no, I agree. It's going to be attritional cricket, and I think it was good old Monty he's been doing a lot of media. I think he's lapping it up, considering that it was him and Swan, wasn't it? That were in the side, and I think he picked up 17 wickets in that series, and he was kind of the spearhead, I guess, in that series anyway for England. Yeah. And that's the last time England won in India. And he was talking about it's just attritional cricket in India at times, and you have to be ready, I guess, especially as a spinner, to, as soon as you get that ball that does start to turn a bit more, you think, oh, I'm in the game here, and be switched on at all times. In terms of the spinners, because we talked about it briefly about Bess and Leach, who would you go with as your spin options in Chennai? Considering, obviously, I think, we discussed it before, and Ross and Jack, you both made a really good point that they wouldn't pick Moeen Ali unless they wanted to play him. But now that he's obviously been in quarantine and he hasn't really had any match practice, who do you guys go with?
Well, I think Zach Crawley being injured is going to be a major factor in this. So I think they were probably going to leave Moeen Ali out. And Jack, you might well disagree with me because we haven't talked about this because it happened, half an hour ago. But in terms of that position, I think they're kind of deciding at the moment between, it was Ollie Pope and Moeen Ali going into that side. I think Dan Lawrence probably keeps his place in the 11. What I won't be surprised at is if England do a properly English thing and put Moeen Ali in at 3. That will not surprise me whatsoever. I'm not sure it's the right decision, but they'll be like, oh, Ali hit a century last time he batted at 3 in Chennai. He could do exactly the same thing, even though he's averaged about 5 with the bat in the last 2 years. So, yeah, I think it'll be quite difficult to fit Ali into that side, but that could well be where it comes in. But Bess and Leach have to play.
Oh, interesting. You think Bess and okay. What do you think, Jack?
I think it's really complicated. I don't know whether Moeen Ali is still up to it as an international Test cricketer. I think the last time we actually saw him bowling, he was lobbing Steve Smith at Edgbaston. So one part of me, my brain, if you like, is saying to me, don't pick Moeen Ali. He's probably not gonna pull it off. But then my heart, on the other hand, is saying, but if he does, he probably is England's best spinner, or he's certainly above Bess. So maybe you do throw him in there. I think it's a really hard call. I wouldn't be stunned if they did pick Moeen Ali as the kind of replacement for Crawley. and like really shuffled things around. I don't think he'll be batting at 3. I mean, I heard we were joking about it on the other day on the Talksport podcast. Darren Goff said that like seriously suggested they should pick Moeen Ali as a number 3 and as an extra spinner. I think that's pretty insane. But I wouldn't be stunned if they put Lawrence in at 3 or Pope in at 3. And tried to get Ali in as the number 7. You know, I think ultimately I wouldn't do that. I would go with the extra batter and the 2 spinners, and if it's ragging all over the place or the spinners are tired out, then bowl Joe Root. But a part of me does want to see what would happen. Do you know what I mean? There is.
There is. And the thing is, it's funny because he bowled really well against India, but at home. And then the conditions where you'd think it'd be more suited to him, he got spanked everywhere. And that's where Kohli scored that 200, and he didn't perform particularly well with the ball. I think, as you said, he scored 100 at 3. I think the thing with Moeen Ali is, considering that he hasn't played international test cricket for quite a bit of time, to then chuck him in straight away into India, you know, when he hasn't had any match practice, is difficult. But if he is up to it, then I personally think that he is their best spin option, just because I think Bess will become a very good spinner. I just think this is a very big learning curve, and he's still very young, and he's still learning, and he's learning on the job, really. And I think, you guys said before, I think I heard you say that they're fascinated by Bess's batting, but clearly Moeen is a better batsman. I don't know whether he'd score more runs in this series potentially, but as a batsman he is. So it's whether I personally would go for Moeen and Leach, but it's a gamble because you don't know how he's going to perform. And it's kind of, I'm just saying, well, if I want the best chance of winning rather than kind of having the most solid potentially team, that's kind of who I would go with. What do you think, Venu? What's your opinion on it?
Why isn't Rashid playing? That's all I'm saying. Where's he?
Yeah, but he's on the squad.
We're gunning for the World Cup title with 20. We're going to be double holders, beat India in T20. And we need to deal with Rashid for that.
I don't think Rashid's shoulders up to it, basically.
Is that what they're saying?
I think it's as simple as that. I honestly think if there was a chance they could get 25 overs a day out of Adil Rashid, maybe even 20, then they would have picked him, because he is a point of difference. He is certainly one of the best white ball spinners in the world, and he does seem to be getting better. But I just don't think they reckon he can bowl 20, 25 overs a day, which is what you need to do. The thing with spin is that you will have a high strike rate. It takes, I mean, even like Shane Warne, his strike rate is 60. You have to bowl 10 overs per wicket. It's a volumes game. And if you can't deliver that volume, it's what's your use, basically, I'm afraid to say.
Yeah, but it's like Zampa, isn't it, for Australia? Like, I think it was someone saying, why is he not playing Test cricket? And I'm like, because it's a completely different game. Like, he's not consistent enough. He's got good variations, etc. But can he put on the spot every time? And like, he's not that type of player. And a lot of spinners get very impatient. Like, off the top of my head, Yasir Shah used to get really impatient, and now he used to bowl very flat, very quickly, and just try and take wickets all the time. But you've got to set up batsmen. And I think there's only some bowlers that can do that. And that's probably why there aren't a plethora of really talented spinners in the Test arena, because players are so used to playing T20 and one-day cricket that they expect wickets now rather than, there's a process to it.
I also think some spin bowlers are onto a bit of a hiding for nothing when they go and play in India. Everyone says all the conditions is perfectly suited for them to play. They are also playing against batsmen who have grown up playing at spin bowling. The ball is a little bit slower as well. They are so good at rocking onto the back foot and finding the boundaries. They're just so used to hitting through the line of the ball that the likes of like Gary Lyon, Adil Rashid even struggled when he was there before when we last toured. Liam Dawson was our other spinner in one of those games when India racked up 759. So it's a bit of a graveyard sometimes for the overseas spinners.
Yeah, it can be. I think as a spinner, you've got to adapt. That's the issue. And you're completely right, because someone like Liam Dawson, for example, he wouldn't have played much cricket at all in India. And then he goes to India and they're like, okay, you probably need to bowl a slightly slower and actually put more res on the ball and just trust the pitch and bowl a bit more attacking. But he's thinking, oh, I don't really want to do that. And someone, for example, like Leach, I think he's said, I'm trying to bowl a bit slow in Sri Lanka, I think he did. Whereas he normally bowl a bit quicker, and speeds are quite a big thing with spin bowling, and also the kind of overspin you put on it. And I think you have to adapt depending on the conditions. And I think it's really tough to do it as a spinner, considering you've got Kohli at the other end, you've got Rohit Sharma at the other end, you've got Pujara, and they're like, as you said, they've been playing on these decks since they were like 2. They're just walking out and going, yeah, great. This is so easy, and they're just used to it. So, yeah. What do you think of Ollie Pope then? Do you think he'll get a look in, considering he's got some runs in the Inter? Benny's showing his Surrey shirt to say that that's a yes for him. What do you think about Pope coming in? Do you think they'll draft him in, especially if Crawley's injured?
I think he'll definitely be in the side. You're not going to name him in your test squad for the first game if you're not going to pick him, because they could just be like, yeah, he's going to be in the second test. So that's my logic. I also think Yad's actually quite a good thing at short leg. He's a good close fielder. And actually, that's really important. You're only going to get a few opportunities. And as Jack says, England taking 20 wickets has to be the priority. And he helps that along. I wasn't convinced so much by Zach Crawley standing at about 15 feet tall, just next to the batsman.
Yeah, that's not ideal, is it? Having that beanpole there. No offense to Zach Crawley, but he's not going to be able to get down very low, is he? Let's be honest. And Ollie Pope is a very good short leg fielder, not as good as Imran Butt. But no, I'm just joking. But no, he's very good. He's very good.
Well, just say James Taylor would still be playing for England. James Taylor would be in this lineup if he didn't have his heart condition. That's the thing. Ollie Pope is the closest by stature and batting wise that we're going to have to.
Yeah, I hope he's a better batsman than James Taylor, to be honest.
Oh, that's hard. It's okay.
James Taylor sort of broke through, didn't he? But did he?
That's fair. Maybe I've got rose-tinted glasses.
Yeah, look, I be honest and say I'm not completely sold on Ollie Pope yet. I think he bats at the easiest position in the lineup. Consistently bats at the easiest position in the batting lineup for England. Looks pretty nice, but I don't think has really delivered the volume of runs that makes him an instant selection over Dan Lawrence. I think the ceiling, if you like, for Pope is very enticing. What's the average? Venu, you'll know, 60 something in the county championship.
Yeah.
He does definitely.
Let me check.
Yeah.
So there's the temptation is to pick him based on that potential. But what are we looking at? A guy who's played maybe 10 tests now, maybe just under 10 tests, has got 1 century, average is under 40. There's definitely potential there, and I think he should be there or thereabouts, this England team, because it's not like, let's be honest, there's a bloke who might come in and average 80. There aren't that many other options. But I wouldn't be against giving Dan Lawrence a couple of tests. He looked all right in Sri Lanka. He's got a little bit more game time. Let's see maybe we see what Dan Lawrence can do. Or maybe we pick them both because Crawley's out, which I think is maybe, like that's the option, isn't it?
You know what, though? That's interesting about Dan Lawrence, because I think he scored that really impressive 70 in that first knock. But after that, he really struggled. I think he scored single digits, didn't he, the next 3? And I don't know, is it a bit of a balancing act to see whether, okay, you've had a good start, but then you haven't really got many. Do you think they're going to throw him in straight away into the first test?
Well, I think England need to look at this strategically, and I think England have found a little bit of a method under Silverwood, and I think there's a clear line when we move to Silverwood away from Trevor Bayliss, whereby the top of the order, 1, 2, and 3, really do look to use up deliveries and tire the bowlers out a little bit. If Crawley's not going to feature as one of those 3 people whose role in the team is to do that, who is the next most capable player in that squad batting number 3? And I think the other counter to that is, do you sacrifice maybe one of your better stroke players, and I'm thinking particularly of Root and Stokes here, to go up and do that, the graft work, if you like. Now, in my mind, I think Dan Lawrence is probably England's best shout as somebody who can come in with a specific role to bat for as long as possible. And I would like England to try and do that. I don't think that's Pope's game. I think Pope's a stroke maker. And if he plays, it should be at 4, 5, or 6. I think Root could do it, but when we just spoke for 20 minutes ago, we were saying how good Root was batting at 4 in that stroke maker role. So don't let him go. Let him come in and sweep the hell out of Ashwin. That's what I reckon. And I think similarly for Stokes. Could Stokes bat at 3 for England? Probably, but then you lose one of your best stroke makers. So a guy who can score a lot of runs per over and really actually has the ability to put some pressure on India. I think stick to your formula. Root, Sibley, Lawrence, trying to use up as much time as possible to tire out the Indian bowlers as much as they can, make that ball soft, make the fielders a bit tired. And then when the wickets fall, you've got the engine room, to use the cliche.
Yeah, and I think this point absolutely nailed there, Jack. And I think it's probably why they don't pick Moeen Ali at 3. I don't think they trust Moeen Ali to do that. Like you just can't, right? There's just not a track record of him being able to do that role. So
what?
I do agree with Lawrence at 3.
What do you think they would have done if Bairstow was available? If they didn't send him home, if he went with the others to India? Do you think
he would definitely be at 3. I wouldn't even be surprised if they had dropped Zach Crawley for kept Bairstow in with Burns coming back, because Crawley hit no runs, right? And it's cutthroat, but Bairstow would have played because England love Johnny Bairstow. There's just no Johnny Bairstow loves Johnny Bairstow. England loves Johnny Bairstow, and that's all that matters.
I'm not sure it would have been a great decision. I just want to say I'm not a massive Johnny Bairstow at number 3 advocate. I think Johnny Bairstow is maybe your next best player in 4, 5, 6, that area. So if Stokes, Root, or let's say Pope go down injured, then I think Bairstow's perfect for that part of the lineup. I don't really don't love Bairstow at 3. I think the answer is reasonably obvious, or at least for a couple of tests.
Okay, Venu, what do you think about? What would your lineup be potentially? Actually, before we do that, let's go through some questions. There's quite a few here. Let's go. Okay, first one. Who will be the highest scorer in the Test series? Okay, fine. Let's do a quick round robin. What do you guys think and why?
Joe Root, because he's Joe Root.
Because he's Joe Root. Very good. He's going to sweep 500 deliveries in this Test series, and he's going to score, an incredible amount of runs. What about you, Ross? What do you think? Oh, sorry, Jack. Even.
I think Rohit Sharma.
Oh, that's pretty left field,
Bit of a wild card, but I think he's started to really bed in as that opener. I don't see England having a lot of penetration, and I can see a couple of long innings.
He's also got that gravitational pull around him. He could use his planet-like evolution.
Oh my god. Benny, what do you think?
Virat Kohli. I'm going to go for Virat Kohli.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a safe bet, isn't it? That's boring.
Yeah, Benny's going the safe. Although, you know what? In saying that, he averaged like 17 last year. Hasn't scored 100 in over a year in any format. He's not in a fantastic form, to be fair. He scored a good 70. But
that's dangerous for England, though, isn't it? When Kohli's got a point to prove, it's not really where he want to be.
Yeah. And I would like to have said Joe Root, but I think, before we give Joe Root massive amounts of praise, let's be honest, the Sri Lankan bowlers weren't the best, and he did absolutely destroy them. And the Sri Lanka attack of the past would probably have fared better against Joe Root, but let's not forget about Murali. But wish he was playing. But yeah, Virat Kohli has to be.
Benny's taking a trip down memory lane there. He's like, really?
Yeah, if Sri Lanka turned up with the best bowler of all time, then maybe it would have been a different series.
Yeah, Surya came back, John Warner came back, Sangakkara came back. Oh, fantastic! This Sri Lanka line is good.
Yeah, exactly.
I wish.
Yeah. You know what? I might have to go with the left field option and go with someone like Ollie Pope, just because you guys are like. I think just to annoy Jack. No, I might. You know what? I'm going to go with, and this is going to be very left field. I like going my left field option. I'm going to go with Ben Stokes. I think he might do it. I think he might. We'll see. I think him against Ashwin is going to be a really, really big battle, so we'll see.
If Ben Stokes is the leading run scorer, England win the series.
Yeah.
Which is just not gonna happen.
I would say if Ben Stokes top scores in India over a 4-match series, that beats his performance in the 2019 Ashes.
Yeah, that's good. Considering
it
I
would
think
just be insane against this India side as well.
It would be.
I think England need a Cook-like performance like he did when they won in 2012-13. And I've probably out of all the players, if Stokes does that, that'd be amazing. I reckon Joe Root would be more likely to do that. But yeah, it's
the same bit that Jack was saying, right? The Silverwood approach of the top three, just churning through the overs and being the Pujara ball eater role is what they want. So they tire the bowlers out. The Indian pace lineup is incredibly good as well, and they're supporting cast of either Axar Patel, Washington Sundar, Kuldeep Yadav. They're not to be underestimated at all by this England lineup.
Yeah, 100%. I think we touched upon this, didn't we? Broad Anderson or both in the England 11. I think, we're probably thinking one of them in the lineup, and potentially, as maybe Jack said, in the day-nighter, they could go with both. I guess I'll see how it goes.
I'd like to see them to do that. I'd like to see them do that, to take that gamble.
I'd like to see them do it as well. I think they should. I think they should in one of them. I think in one test they should do it and just go for it. Trip down memory lane. Hopefully they'll just do it for you. Never know. Stokes is a freak, says Ali. Yeah, well, he's a freak. I don't know if we'll see. I'm hoping he's going to be a freak the whole series. That's what I'm saying, isn't it? This is interesting. Will Parkinson or Crane have a chance at all? I'm assuming no. But what do you guys think? Do they've got any chance of getting a single test match?
Yeah, I think so. If England are 3-0 down, I think they'll probably be like, right, go home best, go home. Thanks for coming, but bio bubble, fatigue, and all that kind of stuff. Why not?
I think there is a realistic chance, but it's a last resort type selection, that isn't it?
That's the worst case scenario, I think.
I would love to see him do it. I actually I kind of rate Parkinson. We went a long time on our podcast, and it was a bit of an in-joke about not really knowing what he looks like. And could I pick him out of a lineup still at this point? No, I probably couldn't. But based on the limited amount of footage I have seen, I think he could be an interesting selection at some point for England in the future. He is, by spin bowlers terms, I think he's 26. There's plenty of gas left in the tank there. I think it's great. I think it's really great that England are sort of carrying him around like luggage. But I do think it might be leading somewhere.
Yeah, I mean, I love a leggy because, I think I said before when we did the video with Ashwin, I said I bowl a bit of leg spin, so I'll try that in as well.
You compared yourself to Yasir Shah, and you said you were just a little bit better than Yasir Shah.
That was Ashwin, that wasn't me. I'm gonna completely distance myself from that comment. But yeah, so Parkinson or Crane though? I mean, Crane had that one test, didn't he? And then they just kind of never saw him again. But yeah, we'll see how he does.
Amar Verdi.
Amar Verdi's good. That's a good point. Amar Verdi, but he's an off spinner. I don't know whether he's got the. I feel like he's there just to learn. I don't know. I might be wrong. He's a bit young. He's even younger as well as both of them. This is interesting.
He's actually a guy I've not seen Verdi bowl. I mean, as a Surrey fan, there is a bit of noise about him. But is he potentially the real deal, or is he the real deal now, or is he? So
he doesn't play
Gareth Batty too.
Yeah, Gareth Batty too. He doesn't play the shorter formats. He only plays the 4-day format. So I don't know. I mean, it's interesting to see his development, but I guess they obviously think he's got something about him. But we'll see. That he hasn't. I mean, obviously he's very, very young. I think he's only played maybe 2 or 3 full seasons. So he's still very, very young.
If England have injury problems like India did against Australia, well, he's probably third choice. He's choice off, right? Because best at the moment, then Ali, then him. So he could stand a chance. Maybe Root's at the 3 actually, and Verdi's 4. But yeah, never know. So I think on the thing that Ali's put up on the thing here, I think Anderson will probably get the nod ahead of Broad for the first test. I don't think they'll say, "Oh, Anderson, you take a 6 for have a breather." Even though again it's against Sri Lanka, but I reckon the Anderson factor will play a bigger part there.
Yeah. What do you think, Venu, about that actually? About Broad and Anderson, and in this case, do you think Anderson they've got a pretty decent part to play, considering? I mean, think about wickets, but maybe just holding up an end potentially.
Yeah, definitely. And I think they as Ross was saying, and about trying to slow India's run rate down as well. I think that's really important. That might be a tactic that England might revert to, put pressure on one end, put the spinners on the other end. I think that worked quite well. I think in the Sri Lanka series, I think Anderson bowled really well at one end and putting pressure on the other end. And that's where the Sri Lankan batsmen were trying to attack the spinners out the game because they couldn't do the other end. So that could be a tactic England could play, and that could work really well for them.
Agreed. Yeah, you guys, I agree. Anderson should definitely play. We've got him Moyne at 3. Yeah, finds that.
It could happen. You never know.
It could. I wouldn't be surprised. Walaikum Assalam. I'm assuming this is what's your playing 11. Okay, yeah, well, let's do this then. Do you guys want to go first? What's your playing 11 for the first test at Chennai?
Rohit Sharma.
For England.
Sibley, Burns, Lawrence, Root, Stokes, Butler. Pope, Butler, Best, Leach, Archer, Anderson.
Okay.
Yeah, quite uncontroversially, I think that's probably right. I think England are better off if they play one too many batters versus playing one too many bowlers. Because I don't think the extra bowler is going to do anything.
Let's just play for the draw.
Yeah. What about Ben Folkes? Do you think he has any chance of getting into that side?
When they send Butler home, yes, but not until then.
Yeah.
Okay. Interesting. I think something. Okay, he's gone similar to you. Oh no, actually, he hasn't. He's gone pretty left field here. He's gone Burns, Sibley, Pope, Root, Stokes, Butler, Moyne, Archer, Broad, Leach, and Anderson. So this is completely different to what you guys are saying. So he's chucked in Broad and Anderson. Moyne in there for Best, I guess, and then he's gone for Pope at 3 rather than Dan Lawrence. And then that's quite interesting. I think you're looking. I don't know. That's interesting. What do you guys think?
So, I don't like that tail. I think Archer at 8 is probably 2 positions too high from what we've seen in Test cricket so far. The Stuart Broad from 2007 might have been able to bat at number 9 for England, but I don't think he would anymore. And Leach and Anderson, I think they're pretty nailed on number 11s for most teams, aren't they? And as I was saying a minute ago, Pope, I think, should still be at the number 6 role if he's picked, because I think his skill set is to be a run scorer, not to eat balls, as Ross so eloquently put it a couple of minutes ago.
Yeah, exactly. I think Jennings was insane. I'm assuming he's talking about last time was in India. So actually, what do you guys think about? So they picked Bairstow, right, based on his India form. So why didn't they pick Keaton Jennings then?
I've taken pelters for this, saying that Keaton Jennings should have been on the plane to Sri Lanka and he should have been in the squad for India. What happens? Crawley goes down injured. Jennings it'd be great in that team. Absolutely great in that team.
I can tell Ross is a big fan.
He's not there. He's got a great. He should not play outside of the subcontinent. I completely agree with that. But he's got a fantastic record in India where he hit a century against the likes of Ashwin and Jadeja bowling at him. Yeah. Should have been given the opportunity here.
And his short leg catching is something to behold.
Yeah, so this very curly fro that he's got at the moment because he can't go get a haircut. But it's a pipe dream these days. I don't think he'll play for England again, unfortunately.
My view is that in general, in Test match cricket, you pick the players who you think will have the highest career average or lowest career average with the ball. There are some exceptions to that. So you might want to pick an extra spinner in Sri Lanka and India. You might want to pick a spinner less in England. But I think with batting, you're almost always better off doing that. And my reasoning for that is that you just do not have the sample size to say for sure that Jennings is better than someone else. The other factor, besides the fact that Jennings might have just had the best 2 matches of his career, you don't know that. He might have just been lucky. The other factor is that if you pick the players you think will be the best over the longest period of time, they will get better. And we talked about this. Sibley is a really good example of this, I think, in Sri Lanka. Looked dreadful for 3 innings and looked quite bad in his 4th. But in the 4th innings, when he did get the 50, that really settled England's nerves and led England home, you could literally see how he was trying to improve his game from the first match. I don't think that that's something that Jennings can do. And I think that's why you do pick players who may be slightly worse in this series, but will learn. And I think like Sibley has got that in him. I think Burns has probably got that in him. You've seen him adapt his game. Obviously, he has less long in his career. His career is going to be shorter from this point forward. But I think Burns has an adaptability to him. I think probably Crawley does as well. And so whilst I get what Ross is saying, and I do think, like maybe Jennings would score more runs in the next 4 tests. I would question that. I would say, one, that's a maybe. We don't know that for sure. And I would say the value that you will get out of Dom Sibley learning how to play spin properly over 4 matches in India, if he is able to pull that off, which I think the signs are that he will at least try, is so. I mean, the ceiling there is so much higher for Sibley. Like you could get like an all-time opening batter out of Sibley. He's still young enough and his start has been good enough to suggest that he might have the game to go on and do something really impressive. You just don't have that with Jennings. Like you might get, your ceiling is literally might average 35 in India.
Okay, that's interesting actually. I think you make a good point. I guess they're looking, at players that can develop long term, isn't it? And you need that blend of not just experienced players, but youth as well. And I know as a Pakistan fan, we've struggled to find that balance, but England seem to have it in players. You've got, for example, Root in there. You've got Butler, who's been pretty much a mainstay, Stokes, and then you've got the younger players in there. And that's why you can bring in someone like a Lawrence and then Pope as well. You just bring them in, right? And you don't put a lot of pressure on them. But yeah, you can do that. This is a really interesting question here, actually. So I had Sean Dixon on, the Durham opener. And he talked to me about Zach Crawley because he used to open with him at Kent. And he was saying that, the way that Zach Crawley got out in the subcontinent, he was saying actually, Zach Crawley went to a spin camp when he was at Kent, so a couple of years back. And he basically just faced loads of bowlers from India. And just, he said, look, he's a great player of spin. But what's happened is because that first innings, he came down the track and would try to go over the top at mid-on. Mid-off, I think it was. It was mid-on. And he was thinking to himself, I said myself, I was like, what's he doing? That's a silly shot to play. But Sean Dixon was saying, look, to be honest with you, you have to play to your strengths, and Root's strength is a sweep, and Crawley's strength is taking on the spinner and coming down the track and playing in that aggressive manner. So he was saying, actually, he shouldn't think to himself, I shouldn't do that. He just needs to execute it correctly, and that's his strength, and stick to it. What do you guys think?
I agree that you have to play to your strengths, but there's also a bit of game awareness there. Zach Crawley did that when he'd faced 8 deliveries in a Test match. You got 5 days to play, mate. I think calm down a little bit first. You're not as good as Kevin Peterson at the moment, so give yourself a chance to at least place 15 balls before you come down the track. That'd be fine.
I think it's really hard to say with Zach Crawley. I'm still not sure. Obviously, we've seen him do some remarkable things. I mean, everyone will say the Pakistan innings, let's be honest, was one of the great innings by an English batsman in the last few years. And had Root not surpassed it almost immediately in England's next series, we'd still be talking about that. You have to also factor in that he hasn't scored another century, and that is a problem. He is inconsistent. I mean, I think it is possible at the moment for Zach Crawley to be both good and inconsistent, and that's probably where I would come down on this.
Yeah, he's a work in progress, really, is he? Let's be honest. I mean, Venu, I want to get does Laurent Moore in his position or Pope just replaces him? Venu is a Surrey fan. Do you want to answer that one?
I'm not too sure because I think others have made a good point about having Lawrence in the team. I do think Dan Lawrence played well in Sri Lanka. He hit that good 70 odd, and I think it was the first test. And he's just started his test career, and I think it's a bit unfair just to say you're right. You're gonna stand out of this game, and Pope comes in, and especially now with Crawley not being able to play, I do think Lawrence still deserves to be on that side.
Okay. Last few questions then, because I want you guys to eat, and I'm sure everyone's really hungry. I am hungry, so that's probably why as well. Let's get going. Okay, Matt goes. Which happens more in the series? England score under 100 or England score over 400? I think more often is what you said. What do you guys think?
Smart money's on under 100, isn't it?
I disagree.
Go on. You cut.
No, I'll say my opinion. I think it's pretty simple. I think England actually can bat, and I think they will score 400 2 or 3 times maybe. I think the problem is that they can't score 600 and India can. So 400 just doesn't stand up that well as a great score in India. And we saw that a little bit in Sri Lanka as well. England were like knocking 400 up and still having to pull off a kind of hairy chase on the last day. I think it's the volume of runs you need in India. You have to times that by 1.25 or 1.5 even. 400 is great in England, but it's batting first or batting second. That's kind of par, if not below par in India at the moment.
You said England can bat, and I was like, I hope they can. I was like, it's going to be a very short series. What do you think, Ross?
I think England's problem after the first test, one of their best players goes home. So Folkes is a good player, but he's not played cricket for 2 years. It was 18 months, something along those lines in the test arena. Butler is a huge loss to England, and especially getting them past kind of the 400 or 600 mark that Jack's talking about there. And I'm just not convinced that Bess, Leach, Archer, whether it's Broad or Anderson, are actually the tail is not going to wag as much as Australia's. Australia's tail helped them out when India beat them. They got plenty of runs compared to the likes of kind of Matthew Wade, Marcus Harris, etc. But I just don't think 7 and below for England is actually strong enough to get us past that mark. And there's going to be a lot of convincing of me that Sibley's actually changed his game, even though it looks like he's trying to. If he can actually do it, Rory Burns isn't that good against spin either. I think it's a lot of the pressure is going to be on Root and Stokes, and that's a lot of the burden to bear.
No, I agree. I think that's going to be interesting, actually. It's going to be interesting for sure. Last few then. Will Folkes be the genuine keeper, or is Bairstow coming back? I think Folkes will be the genuine keeper, right? I'm assuming. Well, even if Bairstow comes back, he'll play as a batsman, no?
I think so. There's a bit of an unknown here because we think Crawley's broken his wrist, and I assume that he will be out of the Friday game, even if he hasn't, and it's just a sprain or something. If Crawley, let's say Crawley is out, I think then Bairstow comes in as a batter. If Crawley isn't out and he comes back for the second test, I think England might actually pull a fast one on folks and give Bairstow the gloves. They love Bairstow.
That would make Max cry, wouldn't it? Max and our other host.
It just wouldn't stun me.
Venu's shaky, said he'd be upset. I'd be upset as well. That's ridiculous. England and Bairstow is the biggest love affair going at the moment. So probably,
That's
here
true.
you go.
What has folks done wrong in the England shirt? This is what I don't understand.
Nothing.
What's done wrong?
Yeah, didn't hit enough runs in the West Indies. That's the reason they gave, and then decided.
He had a broken finger. Like it was. No one knows.
Yeah. Well, Max. I think pretty much every single podcast, Max tries to put forward that Folkes is got the answer to all of England's problems. He's a great wicketkeeper, but the conversation has moved on. Butler has improved with the gloves. He's improved with the bat. His performances over the last 12 months have been exactly what was required of Josh Butler. Folkes has got 3 test matches to probably save his England career, unless we go back to Sri Lanka and India in the kind of next 12 to 24 months.
But why not have Butler as a specialist batsman? And
not going to happen. It's just not going to happen at all. I think.
Folkes isn't good enough, I don't think, to play as a specialist batsman. I think he needs to keep as well.
No, what I'm saying is Butler to be a specialist batsman.
Oh, yeah.
I don't think Butler's good enough to play as a specialist batsman, to be honest. If I think, and I over the last 8 months have changed my tune on Butler massively. I was a big Ben Foakes should be playing for England guy, probably going back to the 2019 Ashes. But I think in the last, let's say, 6 Test matches, Butler has basically come good, and I think has that position for the foreseeable now, at least until the end of the English summer.
Yeah,
but I don't think he gets in the English team as the England team as a batter. I just don't think he's that good at batting in Test matches. I think he's going to blow hot and cold. He'll have great innings. He's very good at some things, but I don't think he's a man for all conditions.
Yeah, I think if the second biggest love affair is probably England and Joss Butler. To be honest, I think they love him. And to be fair, look, I mean, he's that X Factor player, isn't he? And they want him to play. They want him to do really well in Test cricket. You can tell, and that's why they're giving him chances. And he seems to be coming good.
You want the opposition, right? You want the opposition to be scared of some of your batsmen, and they are scared.
I don't think they're scared of Butler most of the time.
Yeah,
to be honest.
Maybe not in Test cricket. I think in ODI cricket and T20, I agree.
Yeah, 100%. That's a different thing, though. He might be the best ODI batter in the world. If you look at his strike rate and his average, it's insane. But in Test match cricket, he is a guy who's sometimes going to cause you trouble.
Matt says if Bairstow plays, I'm switching to being a Pakistan fan.
If you think England's selection policy is mad, you should definitely check out Pakistan's.
Oh, okay, here you go. These are definitely going to be the last for you guys. So whoever's posted, they will say them. Otherwise, sorry if I haven't answered any of these. Chennai is going to be a turning pitch. 2 spinners, 2 fast bowlers, 1 bowling all-rounder. Sundar or Hardik, Ashwin, Kuldeep, bumrah, Ishant. Thoughts? I think that's pretty...
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, I guess apart from, I would put Washington Sundar instead of Hardik Pandya, I guess. Do you guys agree on that?
I think Axar Patel instead of Hardik. And I think
here you go. Yeah.
I wouldn't be stunned if they go Siraj instead of Kuldeep for that first Test as well. All of the buzz from India suggests they've made the Kuldeep decision, and it will be Sharma, Bumrah, Kuldeep, and Ashwin as their 4 bowlers, with Axar Patel as the left armour, which I do think is a good decision by them. I think they'll want the left armour because Emil Denya made England look like idiots in Sri Lanka. I don't think Emil Denya is an amazing bowler. I just think it was kind of right guy, right time. So looking at that, I think Sundar, Hardik, I don't think either of them will play. I think it will be Axar Patel, and I think Kuldeep, Siraj is probably a bit of a toss-up. They might make that call really late, depending on which pitch they play. Ross and I have both read the same ESPN Cricket Info article on this. They've basically prepared 4 pitches in Chennai for the 2 Test matches. And so obviously two each for the 2 tests, and they've got a different makeup for both for those tests. So each one basically on the morning or whatever, Virat Kohli can say we want the one that will be a bit better for seamers, or we want the one that will be a bit better for spinners, and then they can make that Kuldeep Siraj call then.
Okay, you know what's going to happen?
I think that's their rough game plan.
You know what's going to happen? They're going to see how the first test goes. And depending on that, he'll pick the pitch for the second test as well, and that's what's going to happen.
That wouldn't stun me. Yeah. I mean, I think Kohli's instinct on this. So we've gone on to India now, but I think Kohli's instinct on this will be to play 3 seamers, to play Siraj, Bumrah, and Sharma. But I wonder whether other people will be telling him otherwise based on how good England are against spin. Kohli at home recently, and definitely Kohli away, has definitely got a bit more faith in seamers than previous Indian captains have, and India have prepared pitches accordingly. And I think if India want to guarantee winning, it sounds kind of counterintuitive because it's also England's strength as well. But I think by preparing a kind of flattish wicket that might move around a little bit early, and then spin will only come in later in the game, takes out some of the potential for there to be an unpredictable result. Because if India bat last on a pitch that spins loads, you never know. You only need 1 good innings from Joe Root, and suddenly India are chasing 120, and like Don Best looks like, I don't know, Jim Laker from the 1960s when he took 19 wickets. You just don't know if you introduce that lottery.
Day 5 pitches in the subcontinent are carnage. I mean, even when I think England were chasing, I think it was 767, I think it was. I was like, if they had Murali, who knows? Like, I was like, who knows, man? Who knows? This is interesting. India's top 5 batsmen look strong with Kohli back. Yep. I don't think the keeper is a mystery. After Pant's heroics, I mean, he's a sure thing, surely, right?
Tony's probably in contention, is he still? But that's just the way the BCCI kind of works.
I think that's what the Tony fans. Yeah. Okay, last one then. I'll let you guys go. Bairstow, Stokes, and Root, the 3 best players of spin in England, right? Yeah. What do you guys think?
I think there are still a few question marks about Stokes. If you look at his batting splits, you can go and look this up on Crick Metric or something like that. His average against off spin in particular, so right arm off spin, is a lot lower than his average against everything else. It's still 33, which is all right, but if you look at the best players of spin in the world, they're averaging 70. There's a distinction there. We went through this probably about an hour ago now, that Stokes is a player who works really hard in his game and is capable of reinventing himself. So maybe we'll come back and we'll see Ben Stokes has got a really good game against spin instead of an average game against spin, and that could be right. But I'd probably say Root miles out in front. Miles.
Yeah, I agree. Root's like up here, and then you've got Bairstow and maybe Stokes, and then you've got everyone else down here. I think
Bairstow's only just above the rest of them. I mean, in my mind, I don't think Bairstow's some kind of spin wizard. I think he's just not completely clueless. Yeah.
Do you think
Butler is probably the second best? Actually, I would say.
If you were to have a top 3 best players of spins between India and England squads, would Root be in the top 3?
Yeah.
Along
Kohli, Root, and Pujara.
Kohli, that's what I'd go with, 100%.
It's not a bad middle order, that is it? Not a bad middle order.
It's all right.
Yeah, exactly.
I was kind of hoping, the World Test Championship, I was kind of hoping the best team would actually face off against the best player. It'd be like a World 11 kind of style. So you had New Zealand, and then you go, we're just going to bring in Joe Root to play. He's next to Kohli in the order.
That would have been great.
Steve Smith's at number 6, number 5.
That would have been great. They should bring that back. They used to do something.
Real exhibition cricket.
Okay, last question. Matt loves the stat. What is Jim Laker's expected wickets? Does anyone know what his expected wickets were? Jim Laker?
I mean, if Jim Laker rocked up for England now, I think he's keeled over, unfortunately, old bloke. But if we could get 50-year-old Jim Laker back somehow, he'd probably make it into this England team, I reckon.
Oh God, yeah, probably. On that note, yes, thank you. Please everyone like and subscribe. And on that note, thank you guys. Is there anything else you want to touch upon? I've gone a bit longer than expected, so apologies.
Have we set up predictions?
Oh yeah, fine. Okay, very quickly, let's go around then. Predictions. Ross, prediction?
2-1 India.
Okay. Jack?
4-0 India.
Wow. Okay. Venu?
I just can't see England getting 20 wickets.
Wow. Okay, Venu.
Ooh, England are bound to win one. There's going to be one draw. 2-1. 2-1.
2-1.
Join me in the dark side. I like it.
England are bound to.
I hope it isn't 4-0. It's going to be on Channel 4. I mean, there are people in England who probably watched a bit of the 2005 Ashes, the World Cup final last year, and they're going to tune into this. And I don't want to see that. I don't want them to see England lose 4-0.
I'm going to go left
2-1
field.
would be a great series.
Yeah, I'm going to go left field. I'm going to go 2-2. Let's see. I've got a bit more faith. I love a really brash prediction, and when it comes right, then I look so good. And if it doesn't, I'm like, oh, it's fine. I just didn't really even think about it. I just thought I'd go left field. Exactly. No, thanks very much, guys, for being on, Ross and Jack. Guys, if you haven't already, please make sure you do check out the Cricket Pod. It's a fantastic podcast. I will put the Instagram handle in the description as well. And I think you guys might be delving into YouTube. So if you don't do it, you're going to be competition. No, come along. I'll look forward to seeing you guys on as well. Venu as well, thank you very much for joining. And hopefully have you guys back on. And 4-0 hopefully is not going to be the result. Let's say that. Yeah, thank you.